Okay then. Hello. Oh,
You have to unmute yourself on Zoom.
somewhere.
On Zoom.
There we go. I'm unmuting. We're rocking and rolling. Hello, everyone. I am Aaron Lovejoy. I'm the studio painter for Flying Frog Productions. That's why I have this really cool shirt right here that says Flying Frog, and then I'm wearing their hat. This is actually Liz's hat. Don't tell her, but I couldn't find mine, so I stretched it out to, be able to fit my huge melon, and we're all good to go. But anyways, if you want to look super cool, get yourself a Flying Frog hat, Shadows of Brimstone style, because they're pretty cool. Okay, so today, in my infinite wisdom, I prepped for the textures class, which is tomorrow. Which is okay, because metallics are way easier, so we're good to go on that. Got my Queen's Knight, which is a really cool miniature. If you haven't pictures up yet, go ahead and head on over to the Flying Frog store and get one, because they're really cool. The Grail Knight, the Queen's Knight. Actually, all the knights are really good. The sculpts are super good, and the casting is really good as well. So super cool to pick up. At first I was like, don't know if I want to paint knights, but then you start painting them and you're like, I want to paint knights. So it's kind of like the conquistadors. They're just super cool. I don't know why. I just love them. So anyways, obviously knights have a lot of armor, and I want to kind of show you how to do it, maybe a quick and easy way, and then maybe a little bit harder way. So it, no matter what level you are as a painter, you can do it, hopefully. So the funny thing is, the easy way and the hard way, I mean, it's just painting. So it's all doable. I think you can do it either way. So here we go. Let me pull my camera in the way of my face and flip my screen to painting. And we've got my wet palette right here, so that you'll see my colors. There's my name, so you don't forget. And I am Art of Lovejoy on Instagram. So if you want to check that out, great. We also have a Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/miniature monthly. So that being said, here is our Queen's Knight. And so there's two ways you can start a miniature. Well, there's more than two ways, but two ways that I generally start a miniature, either black or a zenithal prime. And so this is a black miniature that also has white sprayed from above or at an angle or something. And this kind of helps with your highlights and stuff. The problem with that, with metallics, is they tend to work better over black. That's just the way the mica, the pigment, is built to work. Talking to different people who actually manufacture paints, they'll all tell you the same thing. You just need to, if it goes over black or even sometimes a glossy black, it looks the best. But that doesn't mean you can't paint it over white and it looks good too. It just, I tend to find it works a lot better. And also I use the black a little bit as an ally to make things look a little bit darker in spots. It helps. So on a model like this is one of the questing knights. Well, actually, let's not do that one. Let me grab this one, the Crusader Knight, the one that we'll be doing tomorrow night. He has a lot of cloth and stuff on him, so I would generally start him with the Zenithal Prime, but then I'd come back and just repaint the legs, any of the armor, black, and so it's black again. This guy, he kind of has a lot of cloth too, but we're not painting the cloth today, so we're just going to start with black. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to grab a couple colors. I'm using the Monument Pro Acryl. These are the amp colors. This is colors called Steel. Basically, you're just looking for a middle of the road silver. Nothing too dark, nothing too light. So like this color would be bad. Their standard silver is too shiny. Something like this. Aluminum from Vallejo Model Air is a great color, but again, it's the wrong color. So you want to start with something a little bit darker. So we'll start with this color. And we're going to apply it a couple different ways. So let's get started. I'm going to put some right there. And of course, I don't have a paper towel. I'll be right back. Best laid plans. All right, I got my paper towel. I've got a couple of different brushes. This is a Zim brush. It's from a company called Sabat Miniatures, sabatminiatures.com, and they sell really good, high quality brushes, Klinsky sables that are relatively inexpensive. So that's great. I've also got a makeup brush. This is a Morphe. I don't know why, I just like Morphe brushes. And we'll get started with, I'll dry brush this leg right here. And then I'll paint this one and maybe paint the shoulder pads. So let's start with the dry brushing. I've got one of the keys to dry brushing is using a palette that's not, or wiping your brush off not on a paper towel. When you wipe off your brush on a paper towel, it facilitates drying out the paint really quickly. I was at a trade show and I saw Artis Opus with their Byron demoing how they do dry brushing. So basically you put a little water on your palette, wipe your brush off. You wipe it off on your hand. I try to make sure it's like just a touch damp. Like you can kind of see the paint here. We're recording this, by the way, so it will be on the Miniature Monthly Shadows of Brimstone playlist at Miniature Monthly's YouTube page, and then it will also eventually be on the actual Shadows of Brimstone YouTube page. But I don't have control over that. But it will definitely be on the Miniature Monthly one within a few days of this. So you should be able to rewatch stuff. So you can see it gets a little bit dark right there. I'm trying to wipe that off. And then I shouldn't have put paint on my palette, but I will need that later. So put a little bit of paint on this palette. I don't need a whole lot because I'm not doing a whole lot here. And I'll turn that like this so you guys can see it. My desk has too much stuff on it. Okay, so got my paint right there. My brush is slightly damp, but it's not wet or anything. And then I can start grabbing paint in here. I pull it out and test dry brush it on my palette. This palette is well used. Usually I like to repaint them black so I can actually see what I'm doing. But basically I'm looking for the paint to come off on the palette there. And then I'm ready to go. So you're taking most of the paint off. There's still a lot of paint. But this first base coat is going to need to be a little bit stronger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in all different directions. So if my thumb is what I'm dry brushing like that. I'm dry brushing like this, all different directions, because what I want is little streaks of that paint to start coming off, and it will look like sort of metallic texture in my base coat. So we get like that. There we go. This is always, when you're planning out your paint job, it's always good to work kind of from inside out, or work with colors like this where you know you're going to be dry brushing and hitting stuff around it. Maybe you do that first. So we can always paint the cloak later to cover up that metallics or whatever. But so we'll get this. Again, kind of going in different directions to get it all working. I'm going to try to do a shoulder pad up here as well. Again, you're constantly reloading your dry brush because there's not a whole lot of paint on it. Like that. Over here. Hopefully, you know, when these things are just primed black, it's really hard to see what's actually going on. But as the paint starts going on, you can see a lot more. So it's always a good thing in the videos if you can see the model. Pull this forward. So we're starting to see a little bit of detail. I'll just keep. So this is what I call insisting. Well, it's not. I didn't make it up. This is just called insisting on color. So you're just painting the same color over and over and over again. You can see like on this arm, details start popping out because of the dry brushing, which is great. One of the big drawbacks to dry brushing is it ends up looking kind of chalky and just thick. But if your brush is just that slightly wet, it really combats that and makes it not quite so bad. So we'll go in different directions. This sword, I want, so this is kind of a non-metallic metal idea, but when light hits something, it usually travels downwards, especially when it's a flat plane. So it wouldn't stay way up here. The main highlight would not be up here. The main highlight would be down here because that's where the light travels down to. So this will look darker than this. So if I keep that in mind, I can keep dry brushing this bottom part of the sword. And slowly but surely, it starts getting brighter than the top part of the sword. But I'm also doing stuff in different angles. So hopefully I get these little micro scratches and micro textures. Just built in with my initial base coat. And if you can do that, it's great because it saves you a lot of time later on. So this one you can see well too. Brighter down here, darker up there. Looks great. The other thing is, the other reason for this, because obviously, if you look at different metallic objects, you can probably find a metallic object where the highlight is at the very top of the sword and it's like more shadowed down below, or maybe it's the same color all the way down. But what this kind of does when you do this, it brings focus down closer to the face. So if you have it way up here, that's like the first thing people look at. It's like super bright. But if it's down here, it brings you right into the face, and that's where you want your viewer to look at your model. And that's regardless if it's a gaming miniature or you're doing high-end competition stuff. It really doesn't matter. You always want the focus to be the face 99.9% of the time. Liz, do you know the other 1% of the time what it is?
The rump.
No, that's I don't know what it is. Maybe it is the rump. Well, all the new Shadows of Brimstone miniatures will have really like nice amazingly painted booties.
Or maybe it's the weapon.
I could just see that conversation with Scott.
Well,
so you really went to town on the booty on that one, huh? Like, yes, I did. That was Liz.
You're welcome.
Oh, and by the way, everyone, you notice my wife is moderating. I used to do this show with my girlfriend, but as of last year, I got rid of her, kicked her to the curb.
I'm the same person.
Oh, and I married her, so so there. And I'm very glad I did. It's been wonderful. Not very long. We've been together for way longer than we've been married. So
that is accurate.
I'm just gonna go ahead. This is gonna be gold. I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of dry brush it a little bit too, just so I can see the details. The silver is not going to affect the gold that goes on that shield. We'll paint that here in a little bit. Now I'm also going to take my regular. Oh, I'll show you what to do on your brush. So we've got paint on this brush and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to start drying. But if you've ever dry brushed before, you know that as soon as you dip your brush in the water, the dry brush is done for like a day, you know. I've figured out how to make it work quicker, but For most people, it's just the last time you're going to use that dry brush in the day. So like I usually have 2 or 3 of the same exact size so that if I have to clean my brush, I can. But if you just take this little bit of water in here, again, just wetting the brush a little bit and then wiping it out, this in effect kind of cleans the brush. And the way I tell if it's clean, you can rub it on your hand, nothing's really coming off, but also it's very soft. And now I can put this brush down, I don't have to clean it. So it's technically clean, which is great. So we can come back later. So if you're going to lunch or something, you don't have to clean out your brush completely. Okay, so we've got a little bit of this silver. And I'm going to just paint it everywhere on this armor down here. So we're not worried about building in shadows or highlights or anything. We're just kind of base coating it. So we're going to do this now so it has time to dry. And we can do some next steps on the other armor that we dry brushed. But you see how quickly like the dry brushing goes to getting color on there. And I can kind of see some details in places. You know, I see where there's chainmail. I see where there's not chainmail. There's some leather. And then I see some of the details built in to this armor that look really cool. So the sculptors take a lot of time to put all this extra detail in. It doesn't just happen. And so it's always neat when we can accentuate it in our paint jobs. Plus it just makes our paint jobs look amazing. And that's what we want to do. So the good news is this shade of silver generally, and it kind of, I've never found a brand where it doesn't work good with this shade of silver, but it always covers really well. So 1 coat is way better than 4, if you know what I mean. And if you've painted a lot of metallics before, you know that some of these metallics, they're like painting with bubble gum. It's really horrible. And that's just kind of the way metallics go sometimes. So we'll get all this in here. And you'll notice when I paint, I use a lot of different techniques and stuff. I don't just use one for a particular thing, like true metallic metals. You know, I'll do dry brushing. Sometimes I airbrush it on, not very often, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I paintbrush it on like this and then do techniques afterwards. So it's just kind of whatever floats my boat. Get up under this. You can barely see that area, but from certain angles, it's always good to cover everything up. I'm going to do the lead, what is this called? A pauldron, shoulder guard. I'm going to do it solid silver. Now, one thing that's good about this is you're going to get like the brightest color. You know, this is the color of the armor. Whereas over here, maybe it's like a darker shade of silver that's the actual color of the armor. And then that silver is just highlighting it. So if you want something a little bit brighter, maybe you start with a brighter base coat like this. And we'll get down in here. Gotta do the underside of the shield. That. And the inside. So kind of just like this. Can't tell you how tired I am right now. I was up till 3 a.m. painting those war dogs for the live stream yesterday, so it was crazy. All right. Oops. I knew that. Going fast. This is the boring base coaty stuff. Okay, so you can kind of see, massively see the difference. That's like super shiny. This is like darker. But I think the details show up better over here than over there. So one thing we can do over here to start bringing up those details, I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm going to hit my palette camera as well. Because I do that. I just run into stuff. And we can take a little bit of this silver and maybe I'll thin it. So before my silver wasn't thinned at all. Now I'm going to touch my brush to the water in my wet palette and maybe thin it out just a little bit. So I wipe my brush off on a paper towel, and then I can do something like this. What I tend to try to do is always brush stroke towards where I want the color the brightest. So that way, when you're brushing paint, it tends to leave a bigger dollop of color at the very end of the brush stroke. So especially if it's thinned out a little bit. So if you always brush towards that center part where you want to highlight, like up here. So we dry brushed all this in, but now we can kind of use the paintbrush and lightly do some brush strokes to kind of build up our highlight color up on top. And what we're hoping to have happen is it doesn't leave like a sharp edge where the color started. So it kind of just blends down into the darkness. So see, now that's starting to look a little bit brighter. If it does sort of mess up and leave a big mark down here, you can always fix that a little bit later. And I'm going to show you some ways of doing that here in a little bit. I'm going to do the face of this figure is facing out from the shield. So I always like to make the light coming in that way. So we can put a little bit of this bright or this silver on some of these top parts that are facing back towards the light. So if the light's coming in this way, it hits this top part right there. It would hit these things right here. So this is 100%, so it doesn't really matter. But also over here, we can create some like little highlights going down all these shoulder armors. So we got our first highlight right here. Maybe we'll do the second highlight right in the middle, right there. And if you notice, I'm trying to keep my brush right between the two sides, so it leaves a little dark lining there. So you can distinguish where the shoulder pad starts and stops, all the details and stuff there. And maybe one right there. And then we will go, this is chainmail right here, so we're going to leave that sort of darker. You can put a highlight at the top of this, what is it called? Wrist guard. And again, I'm not trying to be like over here, I just put the paint on like a bunch of paint and just covered everything. Over here, I'm trying to cover just in the highlight, the place where I want the highlight. Everything else sort of blends down into darkness, and that's what I want. We'll go up here. And did he have a, did I paint him with, yes, silver hand? So, and you see this doesn't take that long. Like if you just kind of take your time and don't be too forceful with your colors, you let the dry brushing kind of do all the work, and then you just come back in with your paintbrush and kind of give it some nice little extra love. Okay, we got that. I want the bottom of the sword to be a little bit brighter. So again, I'm going to thin that paint out just a little bit, so it's not too hardcore. And we will place this. I'll do my brush strokes down here at the bottom of the sword, and I'm like really light. It's almost like I'm dry brushing again with a nice pointy brush. Kind of a weird feeling, but do an edge highlight across the top of that sword. So I just ran my brush. You can flatten your brush out and just run it right across the top of that sword and get a nice highlight up there. And then I'll come back, grab a little bit more of that thinned out paint, put it just at the bottom of this sword. And then that way, and I'm kind of like doing brush strokes in different angles. So it keeps some of that texture of the lightness and the darkness there. But you see that sword is starting to look much brighter at the bottom than at the top. That's perfect. Perfect job, Aaron. And you need to say that when you're painting. You need to compliment yourself all the time, even when you mess up, because you need that motivation to continue on. So my wife and my daughter always giggle at me when I'm painting by myself, and I'm like, "Oh, great job, Aaron." Yeah. Oops. So you make a mistake, you can just wipe it off. Also, you may notice the sword's a little bit bent. Nothing a blow dryer won't fix. So when I'm done, I'll blow dry it, and it just kind of typically the casting has a memory of how it should be. And what usually happens is once it gets done, maybe in shipping or whatever, it kind of gets bent and it sticks in that position, or as it's sitting waiting to be demolded or whatever. But if you just heat it up, it should go back into straight, and then once it cools, it stays there. If it doesn't, what I usually do is I heat it up with a blow dryer. Don't go too long because the sword will actually just flop over. It would be bad. So I heat it up and I push it straight, or you can pull it. If you pull a sword, it can only go straight. See that? It's just straight. Boop, straight. So pull it straight and then either get someone to pour some cold water on it or just blow on it to get, once it cools off, it will stay in that position. So that's a really good way. It's kind of the universal way of fixing bent swords. It's an industry problem, and so, but it has been solved if you just take the time to heat it up. So we'll go like here. So the bottom of that sword is starting to get brighter. If I feel like maybe some of these brush strokes are a little bit too choppy, I can thin my paint out even more. So you notice like this is super thin. And I can just sort of glaze that over that section, and it will kind of like make it so those aren't as strong marks right there. So we got that. Should pull my light down so it works on my. So you see all that? That's actually looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how that's coming along. I'm going to do, his head is going to be right here. So this part of it will probably be in shadow, but it still probably looks good if there's a little bit of a highlight there. So my dry brush did not get into that section, so I'm just putting it in there. These little parts of the armor also kind of get missed with the dry brushing. This top part didn't, so the top part I can just kind of add a little bit more of that silver to kind of beef it up. And then you can really see it as you move it around in the light where it's hitting really good and where it's not. So that's perfect. This bottom part didn't get much at all. So maybe we'd start building that up. So I can kind of put some of this in here. And as my paint is running out off the brush, I can kind of like wipe it into the other side. So it's still dark. The black is still showing through, but it's much brighter on this side. Just kind of dot that in, get this bottom part right here. All right, so we've kind of got those areas pretty good. What else? Oh, this leg needed some highlighting. So we'll go right down fronts of this thing on the edge. Go up here. Again, my paint's a little bit thinned out, and it's I have a really light touch, so I'm not covering up some of the darker areas, the dry brushing left. I'm just making the lighter areas a little bit more opaque. And so those start showing up really, really well. Let's go, this back calf part. So the way a lot of times these, the legs are like cylinders, but they're weird shaped cylinders. So like if you look at a cylinder on my brush here, how that highlight goes, it's just a straight line. Now, if this leg was a perfect cylinder, we just draw a straight line down there, but we can't because it's like fat on one end, it gets thinner, and then it gets fatter again. So where it's a little bit thicker up here, that straight line is going to bow out and it's going to get bigger because the light can shine off more of that part of the armor. So see that? That looks pretty cool. I kind of let that, I can kind of streak it down in a sort of a straight line. It's kind of following the curve of the leg. And then down at the bottom where the armor flares out again, I'm going to take that silver and make it, he's got a little buckle thing here, which will be gold eventually, but when it gets down to the bottom, that can kind of flare out again. And here, we'll get the feet, tops of the feet, we get a little bit of a highlight. So the funny thing is we've only highlighted with our midtone color on the dry brushed area because we can. So let's see, you can see that starting to shine. Now up here is different because our midtone is the midtone. It's all the midtone. So our shadows midtone, our highlights midtone, everything's midtone. So we got to change that up a little bit. The first thing we can do is start adding, you could add washes. I prefer contrast paints or speed paints because they cover a little bit better. And the one paint I didn't grab, let's see here, snake bite. Oh, it's right here. Duh, I did grab it. So it's this color, Basilicanum Gray. This is a great sort of neutral gray. So it doesn't have any other colors in it, or at least not that you can see readily. And we will start by applying it to the model. So one of the things I do, and you'll see this when I do my speed painting on Saturday, I do this a lot. So I'll put this on, wipe my brush off. So you see it, I put it on strong, and then at the top, I kind of just wipe it away or wipe it over the top. So it's darker down in the where I want the shadow, and it's brighter where I want it to not be shadowed. So you can do the same thing on the other side. Just kind of blob this in. This is great because you don't have to be super precise. Just put it on and do it. And then we'll do it on the legs. So the bottom of these legs. The neat thing about contrast paint, or if you use army paint or speed paints, is they always tend to kind of flow into cracks and crevices. And like I said before, they're a lot stronger when you apply them. So they'll be like darker, but then they'll also have those light areas where it does the contrasty thing, where the paint kind of separates, gets darker in the cracks and lighter in the highlight areas. So get that on there. We can also take my regular silver. I'll come back over here, and I'm going to try to, if you brush your brush on your fingernail or your skin and make it flat so it's like a chisel. See that? It's wide and then it's super thin. It's a great way to edge highlight. So let's see if we can do it. It's funny because after you put the the wash on there, all of a sudden it's darker, and now the midtone makes a highlight. So put those on there. Maybe do the tops of some of these things. So we really haven't been painting very long, and like we're starting to get some good color in here. So that's very encouraging for me. We dry brushed all the chainmail. Not quite all of it. Let's see here. I'm gonna grab. Usually I don't use my wet palette for dry brushing because sometimes the paint gets a little wetter on there, but we're just gonna go for it. And let's go. Okay, so I got the chainmail up here is much more chainmail-y. Okay, we'll do it there. I don't think there's any more chainmail. I totally missed that part of the pauldron right there, but you know what? You just dry brush over it and all of a sudden it looks like it's done. So super cool. I'm gonna hit, still got a little paint on my brush. This is really good because you can see exactly what that brush is doing. You know, mostly hitting the edges, but also hitting a little bit on the top. Get the underside of here. There is a little bit of chainmail up in there. And yeah, you might have to find a even smaller dry brush on some of this, but I think that works. So that looks pretty good. I will again clean my brush off by putting just a little drops of water on there and then just dry brushing it away. My brush feels pretty soft, so I think we're doing good still. Come back to this. Okay, so we've got these chainmail areas. I want the chainmail to be really dark because otherwise, like when I was painting the box art, it started all looking like there's just too much silver, right? And everything's silver, so you gotta do something. So we're gonna take that Basilicanum gray again and just put it in heavy where there's areas of just chainmail. So I highlighted it with the dry brush, and now I'm putting the speed paint on, or the contrast paint on, real thick so it darkens it, but it will also separate, and you'll still see a little bit of that detail when it's done. Get this, that. I don't think, no, oh, you can see chainmail right here. Oh, and right here. So that looks pretty good. Over here. So part of this is just finding everything, getting some paint on it. Okay, so now I think to make metallics look kind of maybe better, they need some other colors in there. So I'm going to grab some Contrast Agros Dunes. It's just a brownish color. I don't see this knight having rusty armor. So if it was rusty, I might have started with like a more of an ochre color. But it doesn't have rust. So it's just going to be some brown that's just reflecting light from the area around this model. So I'm going to, again, I'm brush stroking towards where I want the most paint. So start my brush stroke out here and push it back towards the back. And in this case, normally with contrast, like what I did on the chainmail, I put it on heavy so that it has a chance to, you know, separate and do the contrasty thing. But in this case, I just wanted to tint the color. So I'm going to do this right here, maybe the inside of this leg completely. And what this starts doing is it starts fooling you into thinking that this guy's actually outside and some things are reflecting. Also, it just makes the metal more interesting. And I think that's really important. When you don't have this, or you just used a black or something, you know, back in the day, you know, you just used Bad Ab Black or something from Games Workshop, and you know, it looked okay, but it wasn't like great. So this starts adding a little bit more of environmental type lighting action. And even if you don't know anything about that, it's like, it's great. You don't need to know anything about it. You just put the color on and it looks cool. So it all works out in the end, you know. So we'll put some over here. Also, if you put this on and the previous color is still wet, the previous, you know, like we put the Basilicanum gray in there, it's okay because it'll all blend together and it'll all work perfectly in the end. So you see, I'm starting to get some brownish tones in there, like just naturally as you turn this thing around, there's like just some life, right? So up here, maybe we do, so you want it more on undersides of things because it's like reflecting dirt from, you know, across the way. And so maybe the bottom side of the sword. Now the sword is very, very dark on the bottom, so maybe it's too dark, it's not going to show up, and we can always change to a more opaque color, like if we grab this warm brown from Prochrome. I'll put that on our palette, and maybe just mix it in with some of this contrast paint. So it's like contrast paint that's a little bit more opaque than normal. And we can add that. The bottom side of that, you can always just wipe away. It doesn't hit. Put it over here as well. Got like that. Grab some more of this brown, put it on the lower sides of this stuff. And you can always add darker colors. Use a little bit of Basilicanum gray at the very bottom of the shield. Just makes that darker. And let's see. Use some more of the Basilicanum gray. And now instead of painting over the whole shoulder pad, I'm just going to paint in the areas where I want to make it darker. So the sides here, it would make sense that they would get a little bit darker. Maybe they're in a little bit more shadow or something. So I just made it darker at the bottom of that shoulder pad, and we'll do the same thing over here. Maybe you'll see it a little bit better. Again, doing my brushstroke towards where I want the paint to pool. Get that in there. We'll do the same thing on the other side. And so you see, this is not like rocket science. It's just kind of like you just start adjusting things. Put some right there. There we go. Maybe make a couple of these areas a little bit darker, like on his knee pads. And some of this is, you might ask, you know, like, well, how do I know exactly where to make it darker or whatever? I'm kind of following a little bit my Zenithal or my dry brush. So there's some areas that are just naturally darker. The areas where I painted everything silver, I'm gonna have to use educated guesses. Go, okay, this is the inside of the leg. It's probably gonna be a little bit darker. So just kind of add stuff like that. And we can also start adding a little bit of dark lining. Now, if you're just doing this for gaming or whatever, you know, you may not want to do a lot of dark lining, but the contrast paints, since they're so watery, they work great for dark lining. So it's actually not that hard to do. It's not that hard to get a line down in these cracks. We'll go over here, a bit over there. Maybe push these shadows down over here. All right. So that's starting to come together. Let me grab my black, which is right here. So sometimes if my dry brushing got in too many spots, it's always nice to kind of knock it back a little bit so I can see what's metallic and what's not. So like his chest plate almost looks like a metallic chest plate, but this is all fabric right here. So we're gonna just paint it black again. And then we'll be able to see our metallic areas much better. So it's okay to like repaint things every once in a while. I do this, you know, if I painted the cape first, I might, you know, then paint all the metallics black so I can just see the cape. It's a little bit easier to make decisions. But eventually you want color everywhere. So you like your final color decisions happen when you have color everywhere because all the color talks to each other, and sometimes colors change the way they look based on what color's next to them. So you don't want to just paint one thing all the way and then you might get in trouble. So, okay. So we got that. Got a little bit of that. This guy is definitely a good guy, and good guys sometimes get shades of blue. So, or maybe it's just you want to say like the skylight is reflecting in his armor. So I'm gonna grab this contrast aromathic blue. It's actually more of like a teal or something, and it doesn't show up very good. So normally that's a bad thing, but in this case, maybe it's a really good thing. So I'll add just little bits of it, maybe in my armor up here. Oops. So see, I put it right there. Kind of changes things up. Put some over here. Maybe it's only on the front side. So one thing that helps make things more interesting, if you put something everywhere, it's technically nowhere. So, you know, maybe just adding some of this blue on the front side. So it's like reflecting, you know, the sun in the distance or the blue skies in the distance or whatever. But nothing's on the back. And so that kind of, you know, just, I don't know, it kind of tells a little, like it keeps things different, I guess, that's what I'm trying to get at. So just little bits of blue there. Maybe we'll put a little bit of blue in the chainmail. This armor is being held on by leather. So if I just kind of like base coat that, try not to get out of the lines and get on my chainmail if I can. But also going incredibly fast so we can get back to the metal. So we'll get this. Okay, so we got that little bit there. The back of this is looking really cool. Let me just what's that? This is the best thing you've ever seen? I know. So we'll get some of this black again on this cape. So we don't see any of that metallic shining back at us. All right. That. Do a little bit more of this brown down here in the belt straps. All right. I think that kind of works. I'm going to push this. You can always add a little bit of black to your gray contrast paint just to make it a little bit darker. And we'll hit some of these edges in here just to dark line things. Again, this is just to create a definition, which is the most important thing on the miniature. Like if you can define this miniature really well, that's why a lot of people use dry brushing. You know, technically it's kind of a beginner thing, but actually it's not so much a beginner thing anymore. There's a lot of really good painters who are using dry brushing to great effect to just make their models more and more precise. But it doesn't look like they're dry brushed. That's the key. So, all right, so we'll come back in here, re-hit some of these areas. That looks pretty good. The shield, oops, wrong color. So this part of the shield kind of bows out like this, and it will actually reflect things that are down below it. This side reflects up above. So maybe we put some of that blue up here, right here. And then maybe it gets a little bit darker up here. where it curves back up again. So maybe there's, oops. Thank you. Luckily, Liz keeps me on the straight and narrow here. All right, so we got that. I want maybe just a touch more blue on that sword. I'm like completely out of blue on my palette, which is perfect. You don't want to overdo it. So we got that. Now I can actually highlight some of that silver. And how are we doing on time? We're an hour in. Is that it? About? Can't believe it. Leave it to me to talk my way through hours and hours of video time. Oops. So again, I'm using this. This is Vallejo Model Air Aluminum. Best highlight color for silver. Like this one, there's another one called Chrome. I think they're about the same color. But look at how bright that is on the model. And I only use it for edge highlighting, really. And so we can hit that. We can hit the edge right here. You can also maybe put some little scratches. So one thing that makes metallics really cool is just very lightly hitting it and doing these little fine little scratches. If they're too thick, you can always paint over them. Key is to get them as fine as possible. So we'll do the bottom side of this, the bottom side of this. Metallics shine on both sides of edges. So like clothing only highlights on top. Metallics can highlight on the top and the bottom. So that's true for non-metallic metal. It's true for true metallic metal. There's always like a little lip or something at the bottom of an edge, and it will just reflect light because the metallic is reflecting light. So it all makes sense in the end. So we got that. Also going to put some more over here. Now, if you made your armor too light right off the bat, or too bright, these edge highlights really won't show up. You kind of gotta, that's why it's important to have those washes and stuff to kind of knock down the color just a little bit. So then when you put these edge highlights on, they just shine like that. And the coolest thing with this is as you turn the model, they actually kind of reflect light even like from the certain angles that you painted them, which is just super rad because it actually looks very, very realistic and awesome too. So I always hear things at painting contests like, oh, it's all about non-metallic metal. And it's like there's so many paint jobs are won by true metallic metal. You know, but they're painted really, really well. So, but to win with non-metallic metal, you got to paint really, really well too. So it all works out. So you see how this is all starting to really shine and shimmer, and then we've got little pockets of like blue and brown and all this stuff, and I think it looks awesome. You know, it's like it's subtle, but it really does make a big difference. All right, so we'll do these little things right here. So again, I'm just using the side of my brush and kind of just rubbing it over it to get that to show up. Do another one over here. Side of the brush, hoping not to hit anything else. There's like a little, so I'm always looking for, one thing I always tell my students at conventions and stuff, metallics, metal will shine in the darkness. So there are elements down here under the knee that are technically in shadow. And so you'd think, oh, well, I don't need to highlight that. But on a metallic object, there's like maybe bounce light or something that's hitting it. So if we just hit like there's a little ledge right down here. If we hit that, when the light hits it, of course it doesn't show up.
It did.
It did? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Maybe I gotta hit this side a little bit better. There we go. So these little glimmers in the dark are really important because even though like this top part's, you know, that's where like all the highlights are, you still see that little glimmer down here. and it shows you that there's detail down there. And it's funny how our eyes work. If you show someone part of the detail, your brain will fill in the rest, or to an extent. So that can be very, very effective when we're painting. Sometimes I just paint the idea of something down there, and then your brain fills in the rest. So if you have no imagination, it doesn't work. But I'm banking on the fact that most of you all have pretty good imaginations. I know Liz has a great imagination. She's with me, so it's like she needs it. No. You have to have it. Okay, so I'm kind of just hitting some spots where I think maybe light would shine off of it a little bit more. Maybe up here, where we put the highlights up here of the regular silver, maybe I just put a very small amount of this aluminum. Small amount on a couple of these little things. It's on this pauldron, maybe the back side of the pauldron. And then most of this paint is gone off my brush, so maybe I can just very lightly. It's almost like I'm dry brushing with a detail brush, which is sacrilege, but because you don't want to wreck your detail brush. But I'm really not dry brushing hard. I'm just lightly dragging it over these details up here so that chainmail is still appearing dark, but it does have some bright highlights coming off of it. So I'm really liking what this metal is looking like, and we have not spent very long at all on it. So, for those of you who are like, oh, I can't spend that long on a model, we're not spending that long on a model. We're just doing it very quickly. So we've got that. We'll put a final edge highlight on the sword. I'm going to run it all the way to the top because that top edge is always going to be like a super bright color. And then usually swords or metal, you got the highlight on the bottom edge. So what this one does is, again, kind of like in our highlights down on the knee pads, this will show us where the sword kind of ends, and you can see the shape a little bit better. And what I'll do sometimes, it's a little bit hard to see right here. Maybe I'll do it a couple times so it just pops a little bit more. You don't want too much though, because you don't want it like rolling up on the bottom side there. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go into a little bit of the gold. And for gold, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So we've got this dark bronze. And oops. You know what? I want to do a little bit on my palette here. I'm going to start with a little bit of a heavy dry brush, but the dry brush we were using is too big. Even though this looks pretty small, it's too big for what we're going to do here. So I got to find something else. So I'm going to grab this brush, or I could grab, I've got a couple different small ones. I've got a round one, and then I've got a flat brush, or it's sort of like a filbert brush. Let's try the filbert brush first. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a little bit of water on our palette. I'm going to grab that in my brush, and then I'm going to wipe it off as much as possible. Sometimes wiping it on your skin helps pull some of that, wick some of that water away. And then we'll go grab a little bit of this paint. And I think what I want to do is kind of, that's all blurry. Yep. Kind of do a little pattern like this. So what we're going to do is grab a little of this, wipe it off, and then I'm going to start by just jabbing it in. Just jab it in. And this is our darkest color, so it can be like a little bit messed up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Down here. I'm just kind of doing it till I see the color, and also, I don't want to make it solid. I want some of that blackish color to show through. We'll grab some of our gold. So this is rich gold. So we started with dark bronze. Doesn't matter that it says bronze. It will work for gold too. Sometimes these Pro-Cro colors, they start thickening up over time, so they don't come out as easy. So I just take the top off and do it that way. So we didn't clean our brush or anything. We're using this now. I'm going to go in light again. So like anybody can do this. Like the trick is don't hit your model too hard. Hit it just hard enough for it to start showing on the model itself. So some of that there. I'm going to go a little heavier on this, the lion or dragon or whatever the heck that is. I guess it's dragon, huh? And then once most of that gold is kind of knocked off on the dragon, you can then do a little bit more down here in the depths. So just kind of tap, 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 taparoo. That's starting to look pretty cool. And I can do this. I can also grab a little bit more of that water, wet my brush a little bit, and then wipe it off. Grab a little bit more paint. That water will mix in with the paint and make it a little bit more like almost like I'm using a sponge to apply it, except I'm using a paintbrush. So we get that. I think each subsequent little bit of gold that I put on, maybe I focus more towards the top side of the shield, because if you're standing like this, the light's coming down, it's hitting this top quadrant of the shield a little bit more than down here. So just grab this. And what I'll do is, again, just like we did with the silver dry brush, I'm just insisting on color. I'm putting more and more of this color down. Same exact color, but it will show up differently. And since it's all little dabs, it will start creating like texture that we can't explain in our heads. So that's perfect. I think at the end of the day, if you don't know how somebody painted something, they did their job right. Okay, we'll switch to, you see I cleaned my brush out with that water. I'm going to use some of that, more of that water. We're going to use this gold right here. And get a little bit more water. And what I'll do here is now I'm going to start being a little bit more precise. Maybe I'm seeing little patterns that have come up or happy accidents on here. And I'm just kind of dabbing this color in and putting it a little bit more strategically where I want it. So again, on the top part of the shield, this little corner right here could probably get a little bit more. Go up here, just keep dabbing away. And sometimes it looks like you've kind of gotten rid of all the texture, but you haven't. It's still there. We can always come back. Maybe you come back with this darker color, thin this out. I use that dark bronze and kind of tap it in on top. So if you feel like you're losing some of this shadow side of the shield, you can tap in some of your darker color back into it. So see that? It's starting to look pretty cool. I think what I want to do is we're going to take this gold, I'm going to thin it out a little bit more. It's drying very quickly because it's on my dry palette. My dry wet palette. No. So I want this to be a different kind of gold. So we started with that texture, but I think I'm going to start putting some glazes over this so that the dragon shows up as a little bit more solid gold than the background. And that gives us two different types of gold. So you can create contrast that way. You can do the same thing with your silvers. You know, you have silver all over a model, but it's just different. You know, some of it's like beaten silver, some of it's super shiny silver, some of it, you know, it's like all different shades of silver. But at the end of the day, it's just the same color silver, but it looks differently. So see, now that the dragon is starting to pop out from the rest of the shield a little bit. I like that. Maybe we'll put some of these. This paint is starting to dry very quickly. So I gotta work quick. That's how we roll. So we got something like that. I'm going to do one more pass. And then maybe we'll switch colors of gold so we get something a little bit brighter. So this color of gold is very yellow, and I like that because it does a lot of work for you as far as like showing up on a table. You see how that's starting to really, really show up good. So just insisting on that color over and over again, but I'm doing it in a dabbing fashion. Tap, tap, taparoo. All right. So you see, I've got two different golds now. Maybe we go back in here. Like this could be a little bit brighter. Top part of this. I'm definitely keeping it very textured. All right, so we got that. Let's grab our black again, and we'll black out this part of the fabric. It's amazing what this does for your vision. You can see the model so much better while you're painting it. It's a good thing to do. Unless, of course, you really need that zenithal sort of prime or whatever to zenithal dry brushing to tell you where to put your highlights. Then just paint it whatever color you want to do. But right now, I'm just going to go black because I don't feel like finding my purple. We'll go like that. There we go. So that's looking pretty cool. So now, gold has a lot of extra color in it. So let me see. Let me see if I can find a good contrast color for this. Let's see here. This is where Aaron just walks away and doesn't come back. It's like, wait a second, where'd he go? Technical difficulties. All right. So this color is Magma Droth Flame. Oops. Another contrast color. I like using colors not as intended, so, or paints not as intended. All right, so we'll grab this. I want to do a little bit of orange. That might be, that's really strong. So, get some water on my brush and move it around. Gold likes having some orange in it. Looks cool. Let me grab some more of this, but this time I'm really going to thin it out. Really thinned out. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of it, and we'll put this down into some of these parts. The lines right here are red, so we're not worried about them at all. So we'll put some of this down in here. Maybe we'll beef up the orange at the bottom of this transition. So that's starting to look pretty cool. Now we'll switch back to like our Agros Dunes color. So this color is very, well, it's got a lot of yellow in it. There's another brown that I was using that has this one. Oh, Fyreslayer Flesh. Let's try that one. Has a lot of red in it. Red's good for gold. So this is something that you can just experiment with a little bit, you know, like what does this color do? What does that color do? I mean, granted, you could ruin what you did, but you can always just repaint it. We've spent no time on this so far, so it works out pretty well. So I'm going to take some of this color and I'm going to just lightly place it at the bottom of where that orange is. Put some down here. And with this, maybe I'm kind of speckling it in. So it's like not like a full-on wash or coating everything. It's like I'm putting it in a textury fashion, which you're not going to be able to see at all, but it will add up and look pretty cool in the end. Grab some more of this. So this will be interesting because this is very reddish and that first color was very orangish. So the two together might end up being kind of cool. Take that, put more right here. Dab those in. I can also, I'm always mixing colors in with my contrast. So mix some black into it to make it darker. And I just love this because I can draw really, really fine lines. So there's like little bitty details. At the edge of this, there's like a little lip. So we can kind of just paint in a little bit of darkness there. There's some lips on other parts. Just kind of creating little shadows, some definition there. Starting to come together. Do the same thing. This is really dark. So one cool thing we can do is I'm gonna clean this brush off. So this is going to be my paint remover brush now. And this teeny tiny little brush is my paint applicator brush. So we're going to take that.
What size is the smallest brush?
Super small. It's a 00. So anything like aught sizes, really teeny tiny. I'm going to use that same paint, the brown, the Fire Slayer that we put a little black into. And we're going to start making sure that anywhere where like that eye has a little bit, because sometimes like paint gets down in there and it lightens things up. I'm going to put some right here in the corner there. Take my other brush and feather it out. So I'm getting it really dark right next to that bright gold and feathering it away so it doesn't just look like it put a line there. All right, so we got that. That's looking pretty cool. So now we've got 2 shades of gold. Our gold highlight. This color I really like. So you can use a couple different things. This is bright gold from Pro-Acryl. This is citrine gold from Scale Color. I really like this one because usually what we've done in the past is you're always mixing like a silver into your gold. But at some point it starts looking more silver than gold as a highlight, and I don't really like that. So let's see what it looks like. Let's do this bright gold. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that, put it on my palette. And I'm going to put a little of the citrine gold on my palette. So we'll see what the bright gold looks like. Mix it up. So again, our mid-tone gold, which was rich gold, is very, very yellow. And that yellow is going to make it like pop, right? So this bright gold is very desaturated. So it's still yellowish, but it's much lighter. And that will make it not pop. It will give some shiny results. But if I put too much of this on, it will actually take away. And it'll be harder to see on your tabletop or, you know, in the local game store or whatever. The contest you're entering, whatever, you know, floats your boat. So I'm just going to add a little of this. It's almost like I'm dry brushing the edges of this hand. And we'll get a little bit on the dragon himself, just to beef up little bits of highlights. There's like little edges on this dragon that you can just barely pick out, which is awesome. We'll put on the dark side of the dragon down here. We'll bring some highlights in. And hopefully that makes the dragon look better, or the wings look better. Again, getting that definition. Do an edge up here. We'll go maybe just touch it a couple times right in this corner to get that highlight to pop a little bit. I don't want to do too much because I don't want the bottom gold to be too bright. I mean, I can always use one of those contrast paints to knock it back down again. So if something gets too light, you can always knock it back down. Go like that, like this. Edge up there. It's looking pretty rad. And then the piece de la resistance is the citrine. Your lightest color you always want to use in the least amount of areas. If you put it everywhere, you lose the effect. So for this, maybe we put just in a couple. Oh shoot, got it down in the bottom. Wipe it away if we can. There we go. Put a little bit more of this dark lining brown in these spots. Get up here, there. All right, see that's starting to come together. Let's try this final highlight again. Maybe it was a little bit too wet. It's kind of it's for a metallic, it's a very wet paint. Let's try it again up here. Very light. It's almost like a dry brushing stroke, but I am paintbrushing it, so get those, and maybe right on this dragon's chest. Maybe like right there, we have like a little spot of light. Kind of dotted in. See, now it's starting to shine, right? It's so shiny. Okay, so let me grab some red. I'm cooking, Liz.
I know.
We'll just paint the whole thing. Not. All right. So I'm going to use a little bit of burnt red. That's my dark red. You know what? We're not going to use burnt red. We're going to use the best red ever made. So here's our highlight color. This is called red oxide. Very good color right there. And then instead of our burnt red, I'm going to use another amp color. Also from Monument. It's just the amp set. This is black red. This is the best color ever. So dark. So dark. It's dark, but it's still very saturated. So not too shabby. So we'll do this. So these things are red. Maybe we'll do just the center. So the top part of it will still be gold. So luckily we overpainted a little bit. And so those top edges are gold. That looks cool. And we'll just have to highlight that gold. So we'll do this. Now when stuff is super shiny, sometimes it's nice to put things that are very flat and matte next to it. So it might be okay to keep this relatively low key, as the kids would say, right, Liz? Something like that.
Is that what the kids say?
I don't know.
Oh. I don't either.
My niece says stuff, but she only says stuff I say to her, and then she just repeats it. So
Exactly.
I guess they do say that. Like, I'm always like, hey, you're super low key. And she's like, yeah. Or actually, she's like, no, I'm super loud. Keep it on the down low. So I'm kind of like trying to do myself some favors and not hit those little rivets and stuff if I can, because then it just makes my painting a little bit easier. So get that right there. Get the top part of this shield. My eyes are beginning to cross, Liz. I'm hitting that moment in life where the Spanish war dogs have taken me out. They've taken everything from me. But you know what? It was worth it. Those things came out awesome. Like, I don't know how many people have picked them up already, but they are worth it, worth it, worth it.
They're super cute.
Yeah, I love painting all the dogs for shadows. That's pretty cool. So there's the red. Okay. And then we're going to come back with our red oxide. Hope that's not too bright. Now it's starting to look really bright compared to that darker red.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Whatever. So I'm kind of very lightly brushing it right on top. What I did. If you notice, I took my paint and put it in a different spot, like right there. So there's less paint there. It's on my wet palette, so it's not going to dry out very quick. I can wash off my brush so it's clean. And then I can just grab a little bit of that paint, because that's important, because there's only a little bit of space to put that paint. And we can do our old insisting on color thing again here. If we want, you just put it on, let it dry, put it on again, let it dry. So I'm not pressing too hard, just putting a little bit of that paint on. There's a lot of texture on the shield. Even in these parts, I can see the texture inside there. So if you just kind of like lay the paint down on lightly, it picks up on the texture, and then your eyes pick up on the actual texture, and then you become texture-ific. And that is
That's a technical term.
That's a technical term. So we'll just insist in this more of this top part. It feels like that would be the place where that would be the most. So our outer thing is silver. Maybe should everything be silver? Should it be silver or gold? I think it should be silver. Like,
what?
It's just a different color.
What color is it already painted?
Gold.
Then leave it gold.
I'll paint it silver.
Oh.
I like doing things
the
opposite.
Get it in the red.
I just did it. Get it in the red.
How dare thee?
Okay, but I'm really lightly hitting this. Oops, got in the red again. This is the part of the day where I start saying, I told you so to myself.
Told you should have left it gold.
Well, we could always paint it back to gold when I'm done.
No.
I think the silver's looking good, so it was the right choice. Yeah, I told you.
Yeah.
I just I wanted a little bit of a contrasting color or a different color because it started seeming like a lot of gold. So there you have it. Oops. Some of this where the silver hits the red, you could feasibly argue that it's all silver and the red's been painted on, so maybe the red scratched off and that silver hit right there. But usually it just looks like you were messy with your painting, so probably best to come back and clean it up. That's very easy to do. So make sure that all those little rivets are hit with the silver. It's going to be the most tedious part, but you just want to just barely touch them. And you don't really need to like highlight those things or anything. It's just, you know, paint them the way they are. Let's grab, I'm going to grab a little bit of that blackish red and then some of our red oxide, and I'm going to make a glaze out of it. So very thinned out. And then we'll start putting that back in over those areas where we hit the silver. So what I'm hoping is if we accidentally go out of the lines now, it's not going to show up that well, but it will show up just fine for what we need it for right here. So there we go. It's looking not too shabby. And then we just come back in with our aluminum color. And this is where you just you slow your roll. You just slow everything down. Looks like I'm painting fast, but
I was going to say you went faster.
I'm painting incredibly slow right now. So one thing you might notice right there, I put the paint on with the front of my brush because that's where the paint is, but then it kind of just stopped abruptly. So I took the back of my brush and I wiped it so it erased it. Oh my gosh, Erin, that's magnificent. This is the coolest thing ever. You should not sleep more often.
No.
Yeah, I'm no spring chicken, let me put it that way, but Scott may be able to run it all night long, but I am not that person anymore. I was last night, but usually I'm not. All right, so there you go. That's looking pretty cool. The armor's looking pretty cool. It's got a lot of color nuances and stuff in it.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Is that what we're saying? Liz wants to go to bed. I want to go to bed too. Actually, we did everything we set out to do. That looks pretty cool. I'm gonna do one last thing. I know you're gonna kill me, but
I'm not. You do it.
I'm gonna do me. You do me. I do myself. You. Whatever. Okay, so I'm putting the color on really lightly again. I don't have a whole lot of paint on my brush, so I'm hoping to not get paint down in those holes that are already black. Makes life a little bit easier. If it does, no big deal. You can always just put a wash in there.
What color are you using?
This is the bronze, the dark bronze. So that's our darkest gold color. So we're going back to our gold. And then we'll go to, where the heck is the gold at? Oh, I only put it on my dry palette. So it's all dried up. That's the problem with the dry palette. So we'll put a little bit of gold down there. Again, maybe make a secondary little pot of gold. Clean off my brush. Grab just little bits. Gotta be careful because I just wet my brush, so maybe we get all the moisture out of it, because that's usually how paint goes down and cracks and does things you don't want it to do. So I just kind of re-upped my brush. You can see that the high sides of this, like the stuff looking at the sky. So I'm just hitting the edge highlights right there. Maybe I don't even worry about putting paint in the middle there. I think that looks pretty good. And also it looks different than this gold. So like it's nice having, you know, it's the same color, but it's different intensities. It's different, put on different ways across the model. And that kind of gives you some variation. And then everything doesn't look just like samey everywhere. So go like this. It would definitely be super gold up on the tops of these things. So we'll just draw lines up there. Some right there. This bottom thing right here that gold would go right across. Maybe the top one, it's not going right across. So like the light would collect towards the bottom of there. Now we just grab our lighter gold. So that was bright gold. So now we start putting in some highlights. And again, less is more here. So we'll just put them in a couple spots. That. Here. Got that. And then we go back to our citrine from scale 75. And it will just be in a couple spots. So maybe the topmost, maybe just right there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Maybe I don't put it on the next one down because it's just too much. Not too shabby.
Perfect.
We'll go these little dudes. His brooch.
I don't think that's what that's called.
It's definitely a brooch.
Okay.
This dude's rocking the brooch. The brooch. So again, my light's coming from this direction, so I'm only putting this mid-tone color on this top edge and the flat edge. And then maybe it goes down, it's like an edge highlight, going down these other facets of the brooch, but it doesn't go into the flat areas. And then we'll grab our lighter color, the bright gold. It only goes on the top part of that brooch, and then the lightest color maybe just goes on the front one. And now it's just sort of sparkly. Got a little bit of gold on this shoulder pad, so we'll just kind of cover it up with a little bit of black, like our darker blackish brown glaze that we made. There you go. I think that looks pretty cool. And like this guy's like 65% done, right? We just got to do all the cloth. That's a big job, but but it's totally doable. And yeah, so pretty cool. Well, if nobody has any questions, we'll wrap this up. And again, we post this on the Miniature Monthly YouTube in the Shadows of Brimstone area, and we have a playlist for for Roll to Move. So all the Roll to Moves are up there, and then eventually it ends up on the Flying Frog website as well. So thanks again for coming out and checking out these true metallic class. And oops, I'm covered in lights and cameras. But anyways, thanks for coming out and watching us, and go paint some models, all right? Talk to you later. Bye now.